Hey everybody, welcome to Space Force. I'm Jason Tondro.
I'm Thea Seals.
I'm Michaelsun Knapp.
And Michaelsun is joining us for the first time. For those of you that are regular Space Force watchers, is this our fourth season? I think this is our fourth season.
This is actually our full season, yes.
Yeah, we are returning with this Star Trek Discovery's new season. And we are missing one of our vital bridge crew members, Ade Smith, whom I've always thought of as our chief engineer, probably because he's always the person with technical issues. He cannot join us. And why is that? Thea, you want to tell us all why this is?
Well, at the 11th hour, the night before the episode premiered, they being Paramount Studios, announced that Discovery was vanishing from Netflix. Netflix has been the host of Discovery, and that's how people in the international markets were able to partake and watch the series. For those of you who remember the historical point of view, Netflix actually did help create season 1 of Discovery through some funding and promotional materials.
That's interesting.
But that relationship cooled in season 2 when they saw it, when they being Paramount, CBS at the time, started doing those CBS All Access.
Yeah.
So they had a formal relationship that slowly branched away, and this seems to be the biggest thing. The most upsetting part of this being, it came so late in the news cycle, and the news was like an infographic that was maybe 100, 200 words of sorry international fans for the inconvenience, but wait for Paramount Plus to come to a streaming service near you in 2022.
So there's no legal way for our colleagues in the UK to watch this show. It's not on Netflix, and they can't get Paramount Plus yet. And so Ade can't join us. And this is actually really frustrating for me too. I was trying to watch this show. I use a PS5. Well, there's no Paramount Plus app for PS5. So I can't watch the show on my television. I have to watch it on my computer or my tablet, which is a pain in my ass. Like I spent an hour and a half on Thursday trying to figure out how to watch this goddamn show. All right, enough complaining.
But this is in the new age of streaming. Like, they didn't get Lower Decks until I think the DVD release that happened a few months ago.
Yeah.
Like, Lower Decks season 1 didn't even show up for the international markets until, it was in physical media. So this is one of the problems with having localized streaming services.
Yeah. Well, so instead, no one can fill Ade's shoes. So instead, we are rotating guests every week, and we're working on a list of guests, which we're hoping should be pretty fun and exciting, and maybe bring some new and interesting perspectives to our analysis of the show. And our first guest is Michaelsun. Michaelsun, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and kind of where you're coming from Star Trek? What's your Star Trek story?
Hi everyone. Again, my name is Michaelsun Knapp. I'm Ohlone, of mixed descent. I teach English. One of my favorite, one of the assignments we just did was we watched in class an episode from the animated series, How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth. It's one of the few episodes that's written by a native writer.
Yeah.
And it's, unless something has changed in the last few months, I think it's still the only episode that Star Trek has won an Emmy for writing.
Oh.
So it fits into our like Indigenous Futurisms unit, and that like this has been around for a long time. And in terms of my age, like what Star Trek was on when I was growing up was I was Voyager. Voyager was my sort of like Star Trek was there. And then my wife's family are a huge group of Trekkies. And so Star Trek was just, I'd go over to their house and Star Trek would just always just just on rotation. There's a channel that would do like original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and then just an episode, and it just on a loop. This was on all the time, so I've just consumed so much of it that way.
Yeah.
So
lots of Voyager fans around here. Thea's a long cheering member of the Voyager support squad. And we even got some call outs to Voyager in this episode, interestingly enough.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will. All right. So Kobayashi Maru, first up, the season premiere of the 4th season of Discovery. Burnham is finally captain. We have waited 3 seasons for this. And now she is finally in the big chair, and she's sent off on we get a brief scene with her and the first class of cadets. It's the new Starfleet Academy, and then she goes off on a rescue mission, which fits the title of the episode since that's what the Kobayashi Maru is all about. But instead of a starship that's hit a mine in the Romulan neutral zone, it turns out to be a space station, which has collided with or been hit by some strange, unknowable gravitic anomaly, which I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the episodes to come. It seems to be the introduction of the big plot this season. And the station is spinning wildly out of control, and we have to try and rescue the 10 people that are stranded on it. And just to make things more interesting, the president of the Federation is standing over Captain Burnham, eyeing her every move and questioning her every decision on the bridge, which seems like a kind of royal dick move to me, but whatever. We need conflict for the episode. Burnham does what Burnham does, which is throw herself into the plot. So naturally, when we have to go rescue the station, she volunteers herself to go do it. And barely survives, does end up helping the station, but places herself in considerable danger in the process. Everybody is rescued except for the leader of the station, the kind of crew chief, who briefly considers leading all of their crew into a suicide mission into a deck of the station that's got no life support before Tilly talks them down. And everyone is brought over except for the one casualty. And this one casualty becomes the sort of sad note for the episode. And Burnham feels like she's failed to some degree because she didn't get everybody back. She didn't save everyone. And this creates the sort of central conversation at the end of the episode when the president says, "I've read your file, and you are obsessed with saving everyone. And that's why we're not going to offer you this brand new mission on the new Voyager starship with a new faster than light drive." And Burnham's like, "Well, I wouldn't have taken it even if you offered it to me, but I happen to like being who I am and being the person that needs to bring everyone home." There's a subplot with Book. Book goes back to his planet, and we have this great sort of family bonding moment there, only for the entire planet to be pelted with asteroids or something by the end of the episode, and it looks like the whole planet's on fire and possibly everybody is dead, although we haven't seen any bodies yet, so we might still rescue various family members. But this disaster that happens to his planet, his homeworld, seems to be connected to the gravitic disaster that hurled the space station off course. I've read some interviews with the showrunners this season, and they compared it to kind of what we're all experiencing with COVID. They said, we're not writing a plague season. It's not that close, but the idea is that we are all, there is kind of a galactic disaster happening. And there's this episode, this season is all about kind of how we work together, how we come to grips with and deal with trauma, and how isolated that can make us feel. And there's a lot of kind of hitting some of the notes of how we've all felt over these last couple of years in pandemic quarantine without it being an actual pandemic story. Maybe we should start there. Thea, what do you think about, or maybe we should just start with how you feel about the episode in general. What were your first reactions?
In general, my thoughts are I loved it. Yes, there was a few things we can nitpick.
Sure.
And we probably will. I mean, that's what we do. But top to bottom, this is the full season opener that I've been excited about what the giant meta plot was. Like season 2, I was excited by Captain Pike, right?
Yeah.
And season 3, I was just kind of sort of in a haze of what are they trying to say? Like, where are they moving the franchise to? And now that the franchise seems to be on a steadier footing, I was just super excited to be back. I've sort of reconciled that Discovery isn't the show that I would make. It's the Star Trek Existential Threat Crisis show.
Yeah.
So we had the war in season 1. Season 2, we had the Red Angels. Season 3, we have all environmental hazards. We can no longer use our fossil fuel diamonds. And now season 4 seems to be gravimetric fields, and it's all. I'm okay with it. Like I'm more okay with this than say when Picard introduced the all sentient life will be destroyed in the zenith hour plot point in their full season, right? Like because that came in so late in the show, and that's not what the show was about.
But Discovery has always kind of staked its territory as the cinematic version of Star Trek, right? Like the J.J. Abrams, but made for a television show.
And this episode called them out on it. Like Alex Kurtzman is clearly making fun of himself when he's like, "Why is there always a cliff?" In the opening sequence, like the opening sequence, we meet those butterfly folks, the Alonsi, and running towards a cliff, and Kurtzman's like, "Why is there always a cliff?" Because he's the one putting the cliffs there. But it was a little fun, little bit.
Are the butterfly people from a previous episode? They seem like something that would have appeared in the animated show or something.
No, brand new. Once they saw it flying, I was totally on board. Like I was like, yes, I want the stats. Where was Aid? He needs to build stats for these people. I want to play them as Star Trek Adventures.
Well, we'll get Jim Johnson on in a couple of weeks, and maybe he can tell us if we can get some Star Trek Adventures stats for them. Michaelson, what about you? What'd you think about the show?
I really liked it. It felt like a moment where we're gonna look back at like episode 1, season 1, and like here's all the growth that's happened.
Okay.
Right? Like we get like here's how Burnham is captain now, right? Instead of the way before, we get another moment where Burnham goes out in a little spaceship to go investigate a thing and fix a thing.
Yeah.
Gets smashed, has to go running around on foot in space.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of moments like that where I was like, oh, cool. So we're getting some like, look how far we've come kind of moments. I adored the opening sequence with the Al Shane. I had to look up how they're also note it took me a minute to notice the Emperor Liu is played by Alex McCooey, who's in Letterkenny, which is a show that's another show that's dear to my heart, in which he plays a character named Jim Dickens.
So Emperor who? You lost me on this.
Liu, the guy who's doing most of the talking, who's tall and has got like the hair of the butterfly people.
Oh, the butterfly people. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
He's the auctioneer, isn't he?
Yes. He's like super tall auctioneer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But then we also get I adored like we get this moment, they're on two opposing cliff sides facing each other. There's a rift between them that they have to try to right. So there's this wonderful sort of blocking and visual moment. And we get like the Federation hasn't been always great. Which is a note that I enjoy, that that the Federation is not like this actually perfect thing. It's like it works really well and it does a lot of good. But there's no way that somebody doesn't get hurt sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And then we get, like the new iteration of the Federation, and Starfleet, and how that's introduced in this first moment is with two black characters. I was like, this is awesome, and it looked like they're having such a great time as actors in this scene. Just the chemistry between the two is just so much fun, and continues to be fun. And then as we sort of move into the rest of the episode, there are other things that I liked that they were doing, like the president isn't a human, which always feels like in so much of Star Trek that like it's all equal, but humans are kind of running a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think though we've seen a lot of non-human presidents of the Federation, right? I'm thinking of the film series.
I think the only president that we have seen that was actually human was in Star Trek 4, because the president in Star Trek 6 was an Elosian, and then by the time you get to Deep Space Nine, when you actually see the president in the in that two-part Paradise Lost episode, it's a different race entirely.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've necessarily seen that. I think to your point of like crossing rifts, like she's a Cardassian Bajoran.
Oh, is that what she is?
That and I think I read somewhere that she's supposed to be a human Cardassian Bajoran, and that's why the ridges are so sort of like outlined.
Yeah.
But either way, it's that bridging of those two warring cultures from Deep Space Nine. That's the central conflict, and we've sort of moved past that point to the point where we're having children not through products of occupation.
If you can have a Cardassian Bajoran character, then like anything's possible, right? Right? Like, yeah.
And we see that too. We get that confirmed when we go briefly to the Kelpian homeworld.
Yeah.
Right. Those two species are confirmed to have worked it out. However they did that.
Just to recap here, like and Thea can help me out here if I get some of these details wrong. But as I understand it, there's two species that live on that planet, and one of them was a predator species and one was the prey, right?
Yeah.
And we see the predator species kind of floating in the background there. I didn't see a lot of close-in detail on them.
Those one time that we meet one character in one room, and it was sort of like a liquid mass. All the speculation, especially for me, was like maybe it's some sort of descendant of Almas, the tall monster that killed Tasha Yar.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's something holistically new, and I actually prefer it to be something holistically new as opposed to connecting all those dots and making the universe small.
I want to get into the Kelpian scenes for a minute. This was another recurring subplot. We didn't mention it in our recap, but Saru has always been kind of the odd character in this show. And now that he's no longer a captain, he's returned home to his home world. The conversation here is between him and the young man that he rescued from the Dilithium planet at the end of season 3. And he's apparently found that guy a home on amongst his people. And there's a very touching scene where the guy is like, "Listen, you don't have to stay here anymore. Like, I've got friends. I'm loved. I've got a community now. You don't have to sacrifice your own happiness for me." And considering that Saru's sort of been the perpetual martyr of this show, always taking it on the chin for everyone else, that's kind of an interesting conversation. And I was glad to see Doug Jones have some scenes to think about that and kind of chew that over. What did you think about this Kelpian scenes, and what is Saru's role in this show?
Well, he's always sort of been posed as the Spock character, right? Like he's there. If Bonham is Captain Cole, then Saru is Mr. Spock. He's the alien. He's the outsider. He's the one person that is allowed to be developed independently of Bonham. which is rarefied ale on this television show.
Yeah, that's true.
That we have complained about in the past.
Yeah.
But more importantly, he's gone full ambassador Spock at this point, right? Like, he's home. He sees that all the work that he did in season 2 has paid off when he, had essentially kickstarted the evolution of his people to, have the ganglia come out and to survive that.
Yeah.
And you can see that they did not hunt down the Baul, that they're now in this symbiotic relationship with each other, and they'll, for the most part, considered to be equals. It didn't seem that there was a power dynamic between the two of them, which is very pleasant to see.
Yeah.
His subplot had 2 scenes. He had the full scene where he's sort of like it's the motivational speech scene where he's like, okay, Sakula's okay. He's not going to cause another Born, but we need to not be, we need to not do that insular thinking. We need to reach out because we are part of a greater system, and that system's part of a greater universe, and we need to expand.
Yeah.
But then it had the second scene, and that second scene landed emotionally heavy for me.
Yeah.
That second scene was when Saru goes, and he says, not everyone can have all the lives that they want, right?
Yeah.
That landed probably differently for me today than it would have like a year ago.
Sure.
And I thought it was just beautifully acted. Anything Doug Jones does is grand. That man can just act. And he's so emotive through all that prosthetics. And the writing of it, like the writing just like kicked it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I have an answer for building on what you've suggested, but before I get what is Saru's destiny on this show? But Michaelson, what did you have something you wanted to add to this? The Saru subplot.
Just like in the Saru subplots, it's like they keep hammering away at like there's not going to be another burn. We're not doing another burn. You're fine. We're not. Which started to get to me like, are they going to do another? Like if you keep telling me like
you don't protest too much.
Yeah, like at a certain point, like we're getting exposition through a character, and I'm pretty sure that's always wrong. So,
well, I remember last season, for those who were watching last season, we spent a lot of time waiting for a time travel subplot to fix the entire burn, only for it never to happen. So maybe we should let the show presume that it's actually doing what it says it's doing this time. Now, however, to Thea's point that Saru is basically this show's Mr. Spock, I think we need to remember that this episode, the season premiere, is titled Kobayashi Maru. And the whole point of the first episode is that you can't save everyone. I think it's setting up pretty clearly that somebody's going to die at the end of this season, and that somebody is Saru. So I'm putting my $20 on it now that Saru is dead as shit by the end of this season.
I'm not going to take that bet.
Yeah, because I'm right.
No. Here's why I'm not going to take that bet.
Okay.
Because Bonham's always right.
Yeah.
The show is constructed in such a way that Bonham's always right. We live in a society at this point where the needs, we look at everyone else's comfort, right? Yeah. Before we look at people's lives. Just as a society, just sort of as we're structured, I don't think this is that show. I don't think this is a needs of the many outweighs the needs of the one or the few. I think this is a show about the one and the few working together and succeeding. I don't think we're going to get a Kobayashi Maru. I can see your point. I can see it being that way, and probably if I was scripting it, I'd be like, all right, time to sacrifice Jesus here. But I don't think that's where this show's moral compass lies.
Well, I see what you're getting at, because you're right. Burnham is always right, and I find that incredibly frustrating. I didn't like the episode nearly as much as the two of you did.
Oh, I adored it.
I found
you're the malcontent.
I am. and this is for those of you that are watching.
You got a couple of beautiful poetic lines, and my heart just soared as a poet. Both of them from Saru.
I'm usually the guy who like loves every show. Like I'm normally the person who always finds something great about it. Maybe it was just because I was struggling so hard just to watch this episode physically because my tablet like it wouldn't load properly, and I'm like, but I really found it hard to care. And like Saru has no arc anymore. Like Saru's entire character was about sort of, their role. Like they were the person who was supposed to be captain, but never got to be captain because there was always somebody else being captain instead. And then he got to be captain and now he's no longer captain. And if we're not going to make him captain and he's now Ambassador Saru, we have to give him a story arc. Let's let him do something. And as Thea noted, it's really hard for anybody who's not Burnham or Book in this now to have any kind of subplot at all on this show that's at all self-contained and not just about how you connect to Burnham. And we've got all these fantastic supporting characters whom I find every single one of them more interesting than Burnham. And we don't get a chance to spend any time with any of them. Except for Book and Saru. Book and Saru are the biggies, with possibly a little bit of Tilly on the side, but really no. and so I tire of it. So I'm hoping that this season will show us some vulnerability in Burnham and allow Burnham to be wrong sometimes. But I suspect that, Thea, you might be right, and that Burnham they establish the Kobayashi Maru scenario only for Burnham to somehow find a way without cheating so that she can be even better than Kirk, right? We're gonna find a win in the no-win scenario, and it's gonna be Burnham's, and this should be true to Burnham's character because that's what she does. She always wins, even when there's no way to win. So you're probably right.
Well, and I've just decided to accept that's just what Discovery is.
Yeah.
As opposed to fighting it or drafting it. Like, there was only one thing in this episode that I wish was rewritten, and it's a small little bit, and that's when let's talk about the last presidential scene when it's, Star Trek always does this. Like, they did it in Galileo 7. High Commissioner Ferris is there just to be the foil.
Yeah. Yeah.
But except, Ferris is wrong, right? No. Like, Ferris is not proven right. Like, the president isn't wrong. The president's saying many of the things that we have articulated on this show about Burnham. Yes, they've made whole the Captain Kirk of this series, but Captain Kirk still sent James Finney down into the little life pod in Court Martial. Like, he's not the one who's doing everything. Like, that's sort of like if Burnham's going to get dinged on something, it's that she stretches herself like butter on toast. She's too thin. Yeah. She doesn't let whole crew do their jobs oftentimes. But when we go to that president scene, they introduce the idea that there was a short list of captains for the Voyager J.
Yeah.
And then Burnham's like, well, that starts that little slightly petty argument of, well, I wouldn't have taken it anyways. Oh, you weren't even in the consideration anymore. That sort of tick for tack argument, like, there was no setup to that in the beginning of the episode. Like, if there was a setup to that of, like, maybe someone whispering to the president about the short list, like maybe it's the Admiral fellow from the last season is talking about it, and then Burnham enters the room. But there's no setup for that. So it's a payoff. It's a constructed payoff of, oh, this episode has told me that I can't make this decision for you to be captain. It just doesn't go anywhere.
What it's trying to do is a little bit of a shell game, right? Because Burnham suspects that the president is there just to essentially get fame and glory. Like, the president is here to show that she's seen action. And that's Burnham's kind of cynical judgment of the situation. The Admiral's like, you know what? You may be right, but you can't stop her because she's the president. and I kind of like that. Like, I'm so glad that the Admiral turned out to not be a bad guy. I know a lot of us were waiting for the Admiral to turn out to be evil. I'm so glad he's not. We got to see his family, his wife and kid, touring the station earlier on, and he's still being billed as just a guest star, so we're not going to see him very often this season, which is a shame, because I like him, and I like the actor, I like the character a lot. But so it was sort of set up like, well, she's just here, she's kind of it was a sort of a cynical view of the president, and then they do this reveal at the end. Oh, well, actually, I'm here to analyze your performance as a captain and see if you're going to get this plum mission. They had a perfect moment to set it up when we see the Voyager J in the space dock, and they could have said something like, I wonder who will get to captain that ship, like it would have been a line, just like no different than when we see the Excelsior for the first time, and give our critique of that vessel. Michaelson?
Yeah. So one of the couple of things that I noticed was this specific episode questions a few times, is a successful plan, action, or idea inherently a good one? Right. We get that with the mini opening, where Burnham repeats sort of to Book that, like, where Book is like, this is a bad idea. It's like, yeah, but it worked.
Okay.
Like, is that it? And then we get that again later where the president is sort of asking that same question, like,
sure,
like, right. And
a bad idea, but it works.
It's a bad idea, but it worked. I think what we might be getting with, she's got a short list of people, and we know that Burnham is no longer on it, but we also know that the president keeps a lot of cards close to their chest, sure. Right? Like when asked, like, are you lying? Doesn't matter if I'm lying.
Right.
Which again sort of points to like to Burnham's ethos, right? Like, if it works, does it matter? Right? Like, it worked to get the guy to put the gun down. Doesn't matter if I lied to him or not, that I've actually done the thing or not.
Yeah.
And she is also like repeatedly been cagey about her past to us, the audience. Like, she flows some ships for her dad.
Yeah.
But
a couple of times, I can't help but think that's
it's a very specific phrase too. Yeah. Like, it gives that exact phrase. I think the president is considering multiple people on Discovery for that list. And I think one of the people who makes sense, given sort of the trajectory that we've gone to, is Tilly as somebody to consider. When we get that sequence where, like, there's the Archer space station, and inside the Archer space station is Voyager, and there's the circle of crew. Tilly is not part of it, right? We follow Burnham to go talk to Tilly, who then talks about the 15, I think I counted 15 cadets who are now going to be part of Federation.
Well, and she just got promoted to lieutenant.
Yeah,
this is interesting.
And she's been captain. She's from my recollection, she's like been acting captain a couple of times. One of which in the first season, right, where she has to pretend to be captain in the Mirror Universe.
Captain Killy, yeah.
And then we get that again, sort of at the near the end of season 3, where she's acting captain again.
Thea, you said I can tell you want to jump in here.
Well, you asked before we started the show if I had any historical thing, and here's the perfect moment for that.
Good.
There was precedent for a lieutenant to become captain. That's how Picard became captain of the Stargazer. His captain and first officer died. He took over command of the ship in a crucial moment and saved everyone. And he got promoted from lieutenant, not lieutenant commander, not commando. He got promoted from lieutenant to captain. So there is precedent. Also, I think it's a really bad look not to have a woman in the center chair of Voyager. And it's also kind of nice that Tilly is a ginger, just like Janeway was. So, like, from the visuals and the fact that Tilly's arc has been, I am going to be captain one day. That's the very first thing you know about her.
That's true.
She has a set sight on the captain's chair.
Yeah.
And she's had some great captains to look up to, it to sort of model and sort of bounce off between.
I mean, I am not writing this show.
No.
But if I was writing this show, I would tell you right now what would happen. I argued for last season that being the captain of the Discovery is like being the defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts. And every year, like, it's a different captain. I would totally kill Burnham at the end in a Kobayashi Maru sacrifice herself for the entire ship moment. And then Tilly would take over and would be captain in season 4. That's what I would do. But then I'm a member of the Tilly fan club since episode 1. So this is a secret to nobody.
You can't kill off Burnham. Burnham's too
I know, you're right. We can't, but I would.
Like, okay, so I oversimplificated that, like, Burnham is this show's Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
She's Captain Kirk with Leonard Nimoy's acting chops.
Okay.
Burnham is Sonequa Martin Green is a delight to watch.
Sure.
Like, that pilot episode of season 3, where she's going from, like, loss to celebratory, like, though still life, to getting high, to being, like, fish out of the water. Like, she can play all those notes. Like, Shatner can't play half those notes.
Right.
And I like 60s Shatner. Like, but it's a very sort of limiting performance that he can give you.
Yeah.
Whereas Martin Green has this wonderful palette. You just can't get rid of that. Like, I love Tilly too, but I hope the show can relax and be like, okay, Burnham is now captain. Just like Cisco took 3 years to go from commander of Deep Space Nine to captain of Deep Space Nine, Burnham, for whatever reason, all African-American actors have to go through like 3 years of proving themselves before they get that both pip. I really hope that we aren't getting a needs of the many versus, needs of the few argument in this story, because Kurtzman has done that. He did Star Trek Into Darkness. Like, he's done that note. Like, yes, we're unpacking the Kobayashi Maru as a metaphor for her captaincy and how she works and functions and thinks. But I really hope that we can get beyond the idea of the solution is someone has to die.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sure.
So what about the how do we think about the whole kind of main plot resolution with the repair team that have to get rescued from the space station and Detmer and Tilly and all that business? Any thoughts on it?
That felt like sort of like a classic episode, sort of like episode of the week. Like, this where it's like, monster of the week type of deal. Like, this is disconnected from the other stuff, even though it isn't. But it felt like we go in, we do a thing, we did the thing. There's a question there, we're exploring an idea, and then we're going to go on to the next idea. It felt like a moment of that, though with the gravitational disruption sort of like, is going to be sort of our large sort of connecting multi-episode.
We get a chance to like flip the camera upside down and make everybody stand on the ceiling, and
which is fun.
And then the Oort cloud coming and hitting the station and the ship gives us a little bit of time pressure. As a GM, like, it's a sort of classic skill challenge sort of situation. Everybody gets a chance to roll their cool skills and be good at what they do. Everybody gets to invent some technobabble and kind of have some good fun, good old fashioned Star Trek fun with the plot.
We get to see I forgot the Adira on their first away mission, which I'm hoping and they brought back in the programmable matter, which I'm hoping they'll do, which I'm hoping will be sort of like a part to the solution to Gray. Because they brought up a really great moment in the end of the 3rd season. Like, I can see you. We will find a way for you to be seen. Like with a with stepping away from like the actual what's going on. Like, we will find a way for you to be seen because nobody can actually see you. But also, like, we have the actor is a figure from who's been in Rent, and so like and having that conversation of like being seen, Like, okay, yes, absolutely. Like, and programmable matter. Maybe we can get like a programmable body.
So
In
apparently,
here.
Gray drops this line that Gray is going to get a body, and presumably that's Chekhov's body that we're putting on the mantelpiece, and so we're going to actually get a body for Gray sometime before the end of this season. Thea, what are your thoughts on this whole issue?
I don't want it to be programmable matter as a solution. Yeah. Like something needs to happen. Like the reason why I was so invested in time travel as a solution to the bone last season was the idea that you introduce your false transgender character played by a transgender actor in Star Trek, and they are already dead.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't sit well for me for obvious reasons.
Right.
So I hope it could be something a little bit more than programmable matter, because we've done that plot point. We've done consciousness of people into robots in Star Trek before.
Yeah,
it is a well-worn sci-fi trope.
In a way, it's almost surprising they haven't already done it. Like, Gray needs a body. Let's just whip one up and solve this problem. It would take the science team on Discovery like 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be that. I want something, but I want it to be a little bit more than just I have a robot body that I can now like tone my hand like an X-Men superpower. I can tone my arms into whatever I need it to do, and I can fight you. Like I don't want that as the motif.
Doesn't it mix up like how does the species work if Gray gets another body? Like, I feel like if Aid were here, we'd be having some serious canonical problems with the fact that all of these minds are separate and not integrated the way that that Dax always was in the show.
Well, we never actually spent time in Dax's head. Like we're told from Adira and Gray from last season that this is unusual. Gray is something special and unique, and we haven't figured out what that mystery is.
And part of this is because Adira is human?
Could very well be, could have that. But, Riker held the symbiont, and that wasn't the case. So I don't know what they're going for, but I really the idea of it being a robot body just does not appeal to me. Like, yeah, there's a body hole element to it that's making me a little unsettled. And again, it comes down to execution.
Well, you weren't a fan of the android body in Picard either, so
I wasn't. But that's what it is now.
Yeah.
But we've already done that. Like we just did that plot point in another Star Trek show that's new. Like it's not even like me pointing to an episode of Voyager or Deep Space Nine and be like, hey, well. Star Trek Enterprise. Oh, I do want to say, when they announced the Starbase Ultron, they play Ultron's theme music. Even talking about it, I have goosebumps. Because for the longest time, it was the only Star Trek show in continuity once those Abrams movies happened.
Yeah.
So it's just nice that we. I like the symbolic energy of. In the Bowman years, having the station Ultron surrounding the Starship Voyager, which is the last point in the timeline that Bowman sort of like really deals with, and like having that symbolism on the screen, like, okay, here's this thing, we're gonna play the nice music for you, and maybe we'll get back to it.
It's the Alpha and the Omega. It's the
it was kind of nice. It was kind of nicely done.
So what about the subplot of Book and going back to his home planet, and we get this we get a sort of rite of passage scene for his nephew that he gets to participate in, and then everybody's dead by the end.
Krypton happened, and Book was Superman.
The Book is Superman. Michaelson, what do you think's going on there? What can we what did you make out of that scene? Did it work for you? Did we get some emotional stakes? Do we feel bad for Book?
I certainly felt bad when I first watched the episode, and he's flying up through the just dead birds just falling and falling, was just immediately just like choking up, and then he goes up, and then we watch as like the gravitational distortion like ripples and the planet explodes. I was teared up. I was crying a little bit. I also did not care at all for that it happened to his planet, and like what his planet and his people are sort of like, or at least what they feel like they are for me.
Yeah.
Especially in that like, given like last season, we're having a conversation about of like not just fossil fuels, but like dependency on a specific energy source.
Yep.
And then we go to a planet that feels, if not like indigenous, at the very least, like okay, well, here's the tree hugger planet, right? Like they touch trees, they hug trees, they've got that like that's the planet that gets blown up.
There's some Afrofuturism stuff going on here,
I think so. And I think that puts it in an interesting light. But given the current context of and I'm rereading Gerald Visner right now. So like a lot of this is like sort of forefronted in my mind. Yeah, it was a moment that like the drama of it absolutely plays and works. The text of it I think works. Some of the subtext that I'm seeing in it, I didn't really care for. It was also weird that like his nephew looked like he was 7. It's like he only gets to be a man once. Like he's 7.
He's a kid.
Like it sounded like they changed the word walk a little bit, but it sounds like he's like, no, walk, Lido, walk, as a kid's like running off, like he's like a kid like running around a pool. Like how, like, is this kid a man? Is he a man?
Yeah,
the kid was the worst part of this episode. Like he was making some goofy faces, and
yeah,
you have a child actor.
Yeah.
You're going to have a limited palette of what you can do with that child actor.
Yeah.
I'm not faulting the show for that. Like,
for sure.
You got to do what you got to do. But to Michaelsun's point, like, I definitely picked up on the indigenous undertones of what they've set up. Because if we remember in season 3, this was a planet that was colonized by the Orions. Oh. That's why Burnham and Book go to the planet originally in the Jonathan Frakes directed episode, was to sort of liberate this planet and stop the advancing of the Orion threat. So we already have a people who have just recently been liberated.
Yeah.
And now we've used the word like dilithium dependency. This is the phrase the president used in the Office scene.
Yeah.
And now we've gone ahead and we've just eradicated these people who have, like, they have natural powers. Like they'll empaths, yes, but they'll empaths for animals and their surroundings. So not like empaths in the Deanna Troi sense of the word.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm also with Michaelsun in the uncomfortableness that, like, yes, I made the Krypton joke, but I don't, like, I was choked up because that actor's amazing. David Aja is just amazing. Even when he's given really bad material on that Supergirl show playing Manchester Black, he's like the most interesting version of Manchester Black ever. But I just, like, so there's a couple points in this episode when they introduce new elements. I'm like, okay, this is the ritual. The captain, the commander of the ship is wearing yellow. Yellow traditionally is the transfer color from the red from the original series. Okay. I'm clocking time till he dies.
Okay, so this is apparently Burnham's first officer?
No, this was Commander Nellis.
I'm thinking of the guy who's sitting in the chair for
no. I'm talking about the commander of the space station.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, I've seen enough Star Trek in my life, and I will continue to watch enough Star Trek that when you introduce a new character and you give him lines of dialogue, and it's very plot driven that he's tied into, he will invariably be dead by the end of the episode.
Well, I knew he was dead as soon as he started talking about going home and visiting his family. Like as soon as
for me it was like once the hologram shows up and he's like, I need help, and I'm like, oh, which don't just in yellow because we've changed the color scheme.
Yeah.
But the same thing, like when they went to the planet, I'm like, okay, something awful is going to happen here.
Yeah.
I didn't think it'd be that awful. I did not assume like planet destruction because I don't go that big.
Well, yes, you do. Don't give me that. I was surprised because it felt like we've spent so much time fighting and struggling for this planet in season 3. It feels strange to make all of that pointless in season 4, but maybe they felt like they needed to raise the stakes really high right away, and I can get that.
Well, I wonder in the drama sense of it, if this is part of like the Kobayashi Maru and we're just too zoomed in maybe right now.
Yeah.
And as we zoom out larger, which I don't know how I'll feel. It'll depend on execution. But I can imagine executions that don't work for me more readily than I can ones that do, where this gravitational disruptions are malicious and not just they're just happening. Yeah, like we don't know why it's happening, and not doing what they did in season 3, where you tie it back to a person, regardless of that person's intentions, right? Like regardless of Su'Kal's intentions, Su'Kal is still responsible for the deaths of lots of people, right?
For sure.
And so I don't know. I hope they don't. They've walked that path. Hopefully they don't walk it again. But also start. And I hope they don't do that because we've now gone into the future, and we Star Trek seems to be maybe stepping away from walking over the path of the original series again and again and again and again.
In an episode titled Kobayashi Maru, where the whole discussion is the morality of ideas, like versus execution, like we're still formally in Star Trek territory. We're just in a time and space where the stories are all interconnected. Like that's the big difference. The story structure on television has changed since the 60s, but we're still having these discussions.
So who is that first officer guy? Is he new, or was he around in season 3 and I just didn't notice him?
Oh no, he was new. Oh no. Reese has been in the background since episode 3, I think.
Okay, so he's just a background character.
Yeah,
he's been promoted to first officer apparently.
Yeah, he was the weapons officer originally, and he's the one that Olka shouts out like "not good enough."
Oh
he's the guy who like reported like they were doing like a battle test, and look, he was like, "We were only like 18 seconds off," and he's like, "Not good enough," and then let's do it again.
Got it.
I do miss Lorca. I wish we would get him back in some way, shape, or form. I don't want Mirror Universe Lorca. I just want that actor back.
Well, for the record, if anybody out there is still jonesing for some Lorca, like he's got a long plot line in Star Trek Online that they brought the actor in for, and you get to deal with the original Lorca and the mirror Lorca, and you're there when the mirror transfer happens and all kinds of stuff. So you get to do plenty of play. Yeah, he's a great actor, and it would be neat to find. I mean, in theory, the real universe Lorca is still out there somewhere, right?
And Captain Pike has a TV show formerly set in that universe, so it's that time frame. So wouldn't it be that much of a stretch for them to bring back Lorca in some way, shape, or form?
That's true. All right. Any last thoughts or anything on the show before was it just me? I don't believe we got a trailer for next episode. Normally
we did not. We're flying blind.
And you said that you mentioned they're also playing this pretty close to the vest in terms of how many episodes the season is.
Well, there's been no official announcement from Paramount or the executives themselves. Memory Alpha has it listed as 13. And they've listed, I don't know if that's just going off of the last season and it's being show run by Michelle Paradise, I'm going media donk on interviews and the like.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to fantasy book the show because it wasn't hampering my enjoyment of the show, and I'm just going to like I'm doing the Jason Blackman. I'm just going to consume it as it's delivered to me and be like, I could do without the celery of this Voyager J plot line that went nowhere and did nothing.
Yeah, very good. Anybody else? Michaelson, thoughts on this episode before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think on the whole, I liked it. There was the moment that we just talked about that, didn't sit right with me, but I could see, how they deal with it. I think will be interesting. I hope. They've done well in a lot of ways, so yeah, I'm excited for more episodes to come. And we didn't get to talk about costumes. Love the costumes.
Oh yeah, the new uniforms. What do we think of those uniforms?
I love those.
You like them? I was a little. They were kind of. Is she back in burgundy? It feels like a little bit of classic burgundy outfits to me. I don't know. Theo?
I thought they were better than the season 3 finale uniforms.
Yeah.
Which looked like bellhops.
Yeah.
They're definitely better than that. And we got different sets. We also got the dress uniforms.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sold on the new uniforms, but I'm always like the hardest to please when it comes to these sorts of like cosmetic changes in Star Trek. I'm just happy to be back on the ship again. I'm happy to be, yeah, they made a lot of changes to the ship in season 3, but it's still Discovery. It's still the nice chair. And I actually like, at this point in time, I have grown to love the aesthetics of the show. Like those been a learning curve.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy to be back on Discovery, and like we're gonna discover something. We're gonna figure out what these gravimetrical fields are, and I'm sort of excited for them. I'm pumped for this season.
We've got a big galactic threatening menace, and it's up to our heroes to figure out the problem and to somehow solve it. And we can pretty much assume that they will somehow. The question is how much will they have to sacrifice along the way, and that we'll all get through it together. That's that. All right. Thanks everyone for watching our first new episode of Space Force. We'll be back in a week with, I think, Jason Keeley, my colleague from Paizo, who runs some Star Trek adventures of his own and is a longtime Star Trek fan. And he'll be on to give us his thoughts on the next episode, which we don't even have a name for yet. It's a mystery. Join us then. Thanks, everyone.